All right, hitting some buttons. Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and today I'm joined by Kelsey. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. So you have a thing that you're doing called the Arcane Library. Could you kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm the I guess the sole operator of this little publishing house called the Arcane Library. I write and publish fifth edition adventures, and more recently I've been working on like a retro clone style D&D RPG called Shadow Dark. So I'm publishing material for both, and I've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years now, and I can't believe this is my job. It's the best job in the world. So I love it.
Awesome. We got some links down in the description so you can check out the Arcane Library as well. I feel obligated to mention we have a Kickstarter going on. It is funded, and there's a link in the description for that as well. So, how many titles have you done so far? There's a bunch of them over there.
Oh, I think around 20, 20-ish titles or yeah, I don't even know. I should count. But I think it's 20. I just published a zine also. So that's my first, actually, that was my first ever print publication. So I think that puts me at 21.
Oh, nice. You're definitely a veteran now. So, how did you get started with it? And what advice do you have for someone who's trying to break into third party publishing as a small creator?
Yeah, so I got started because my my now wife at the time knew I loved writing adventures, and she was like, "Why don't you ever publish anything for this?" And I was like, "No one's gonna like it." So my first piece of advice is don't think people won't like your work, because it's not true. And I think you should just write something and get it out there. And you probably a good place to start is DM's Guild, because there's a ton of eyes on that work. So I built myself up by starting publishing on DM's Guild and then kind of redirecting people to my other work. And so if you want to grow yourself as a publisher, just like get a couple adventures out there. You can always improve them after the fact, which I did. I republished mine with nicer layout and formatting as time went on. And you can just kind of start to let people know what your style is like, what kind of work you have out there, and keep publishing. Like that's the key, is to keep writing and keep publishing even when you're not seeing a ton of traction right away, because these things grow over time and they grow the more you invest in them. So if I had quit after my first third adventure, I would never be where I am. And my third adventure did not sell that well, but I kept going, and then now things are going good. So you just got to build up.
So, do you work in InDesign?
I do now, but I didn't initially. I actually did all my layout in Pages, Apple Pages, for literally until last year. So I learned InDesign honestly through Udemy. There's this really excellent course through Udemy, and I'm telling you, I'm not good at this stuff. And I took this course, I did it over a weekend, and it took me from knowing nothing and being terrified of InDesign to being able to publish things in print. And it absolutely improved my layout game. I regret not doing it sooner. And if someone's on the fence, if you're I'm bad at technology, you're not worse than I am. So you can do it. And I would strongly encourage you. That course on Udemy, I don't even remember what it's called. You'll know it when you see it, because it's a really popular one. And I'm not endorsed by them, but I do really recommend it. So
Yeah, they got a lot of great stuff over there.
yeah, it's good. You'd think it's scammy or something, but it's not. It's really good learning.
So, what do you do for art? Do you commission artists? Do you stock art?
Both. I do use a fair amount of stock art, because I think right now it's a speed thing. So if you want to publish quickly and get material out regularly, you almost have to use stock art to maintain that pace, because contracting and commissioning art out is really, it's really fun and it's really rewarding, and you get to get some excellent pieces, but it takes a long time to organize artists, and it takes a lot of budget as well. So I always commission out cartography. I think that's really important. if you have the chance to make a really awesome map, I think that's really great. But I use a lot of stock art from like Shutterstock and Drive Through RPG. There's a huge amount of excellent fantasy stock art that you can pull from, and it really can just get you off the ground.
Yeah, there's Dream Times is another really good one. There's actually a ton that you can do with stock art, and sometimes it's just a economical solution because it is expensive unless you're like kickstarting something and going to making a print run from it. It is very difficult, to even afford an artist. Like, I'm looking at some of your titles now, $2.99, $4.99. Like, how many do you have of those you have to sell to pay for even just one piece of art? Like, hundreds.
Yeah. If every piece of art in that book was custom, it would be, I would have to price higher. And so it's funny because I'm writing a book right now where every single piece of art in it is custom, and it's like a 300 plus page book. And by far the hardest part of developing the book has been wrangling the artists and making sure the budget is there. And that's been the hardest part for sure. So it's to someone just getting started in publishing, I don't think you should kick yourself for not having custom art to begin. Like, it's something that everyone should aspire to, but like, you don't have to not publish because you don't have custom art. It's even someone like me who does this for my job, I use stock art, and it's totally cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we did Out of the Box Encounters, I believe the art budget for that ended up around 15 grand. So, and we were only able to do that because we did a Kickstarter and it was successful. Like, otherwise, forget about it. And and we put a lot of art into that book. Like, we did 55 encounters, and every encounter had a piece of art and a map to it. And then there was like some extra pieces of art in there, and of course the cover as well. So that stuff starts adding up really fast.
It does. And I mean, thank goodness for Kickstarter, right? Because if you can get something out by Kickstarter and that can front fund all the art for you, like, that's tremendous, so that, and I've never actually done a Kickstarter of my own. But I can see where it's extremely useful for helping fund the budget if you want to do custom art. So new publishers could totally break in by doing that.
Yeah. And also, it also is good marketing too. Like, Kickstarter does their own marketing, as does probably any of the crowdfunding. Like, I've only, we've got our second Kickstarter right now, so I've only had experience with that. But it's like, half, if not more, of your pledges come from people that you have no idea who they are, or they have no idea who you are, right? So that's kind of like a good tool for that alone, just like getting your name out there as well.
Yeah, and it's huge. I mean, RPG publishing I think it's Kickstarter's bread and butter, right? It's a huge segment of what Kickstarters they actually have on their platform. It's like really big. So
there's a lot of board games. I've seen other things on there too. Potato salad.
Yeah.
Do you remember the potato salad one?
No, I didn't know about that one.
Google it. This guy's like, I guess it started like as a joke, but he raised some ridiculous amount of money on Kickstarter, and the premise was, I've never made potato salad and I want to make potato salad, and it's like, hundreds of thousands of dollars later.
Oh my gosh, the power of crowdfunding then, like this, and like the fact that it puts your idea in front of people you don't know, and it turns it viral, like that's thus the potato salad.
So what kind of adventures are you writing? Like, are they like campaign arcs? Are they like, here's something to do for a night?
I mostly focus on like either one shots, which are like technically supposed to be done in one sitting, but usually it's like, I don't know if most groups play for about 4 hours anymore even, so it might be 2 sittings worth, or like adventure length, like definitely 2 sessions worth, like 6 to 8 hours worth of content. And I've done semi-related adventures that like can connect together, but I've never written a full campaign arc because I honestly think that I don't know a really strong way to approach that that hasn't kind of fallen apart. I've actually tried to write one before. Um, and it's just, I think that I'm such an episodic style dungeon master when I run games. And I have a really hard time trying to create a trajectory that's like super lengthy towards an end goal. So I'm struggling with that. Maybe one day I'll write something that's campaign length, but I've tried and have hit a wall with it. So I have to like let it sit and see what happens, think it through.
I will say, from kind of like a market share perspective, though, probably like those smaller adventures is a good place to kind of butter your bread, because you've got like Frog God Games, Kobold Press, and Wizards of the Coast themselves writing 10 level arcs.
Yeah.
So then that would be who you're competing with. But they're not, what they're not doing is like, a lot of like standalone or in mini arcs.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of actually like Wizards itself has done a lot of research into how long people stick with campaigns and like how long they play their characters. And most of the time it comes back that people like will end around either 6 or 7 sessions or sixth or seventh level,
Yeah.
So it's funny that they're writing material that falls so far outside both of those data points, yet they themselves collected that data. So it's really interesting. And like, I
Maybe
know people
it's
who are
because they
like,
know people will keep trying to start those adventures over and over again and keep failing.
yes, probably. I mean, like, and don't you know people who are still playing like some of their major campaign releases from like 3 years back? Like I have some friends who just finished Curse of Strahd. They've been playing it for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we don't, what are we gonna do next? Because each campaign, like they release a new big one every year. So it's pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, I do find that odd too, because they're they've stepped up their release schedule. They release probably 2 adventures a year, and one of them is definitely always a bigger one. And it's like, I'm like, who are playing these? Like, there's no way that you're gonna play them. Like, our group tends to mostly do homebrew type stuff anyway. Even though we like buy all the books, so we may like pick pieces out of them, but for the most part, it isn't even until recently that we've actually had campaigns that would even stay together, and it took us like 20 years to figure that out. So I don't know. I don't know what other people are doing.
I don't know. I think that even like, yeah, for people like I have not always had, in fact, rarely do I have a game that results in like a years long campaign. Like we set out without major plans, like, oh, will it be a campaign? Won't it? But I think in the last 5 years, I've only run like 2 games that ended up being multi-year long campaigns. So like it's not that common even for people who
No.
play D&D all the time. It's like the games just hit a natural ending point at a certain spot a lot of the time that's well before the 2 year mark.
Uh, Jake from Mini Train Domain is in the chat and said, I ran Tome of Annihilation for 3 years. And that's the other thing too. A lot of these adventures are so beefy. If I think if you're a DM with a lot of experience, you're going to start like padding that stuff out. If you have players that are very active, they're going to do things that are kind of off book. So that stuff really starts to get padded out.
Yeah. By the way, hi Jake. I love Jake.
Jake is a great guy. So
Coolest.
You're also working on your own RPG right now.
Yes, that's true. It's I feel like it's like it's a rite of passage for game designers now to make their own RPG. Like everyone has to do it at least once. So but this one is called Shadow Dark RPG, and it's it's a blend, I guess, of 5e and OSR, which people have heard that before too, but it's essentially trying to take like the D20 bounded accuracy system that we see in 5e, which I think is really cool. It's like super slick. Like you roll a 20-sided die, you add a bonus, you try to hit a target number. And it's transporting that into a different style of play that kind of emphasizes exploration and maybe a lower character power level. Which I played D&D. I started playing D&D during second edition. And I was so lucky to have a dungeon master who was like a really excellent, um, kind of prominent member of the old school back in the day. And so he would run really old school style adventures for us. And that's the feel that to me is like that kind of adventure feels very nostalgic and really fun to me. And that's like the kind of D&D that I remember like eating pizza and like playing all weekend with my friends. So I wanted to write this system to sort of support that style of play, but to really clean up the crazy math that you saw back in the older editions and the, like all of the crazy bolt-on systems and inconsistencies. I kind of tried to squish that out and make it more easy.
Yeah, like the earlier games, it wasn't that they had a lot of mechanics. It's just the mechanics they did have were overly complex for complexity's sake.
Yes, and not consistent. Like
Yeah.
they didn't work the same between two classes, you know? So yeah.
So okay, in Shadow Dark, can you play a dwarf or an elf?
You know it's so funny. It was such a hard debate about whether dwarf or elf would be a class because it used to be that way. And I personally have more fun with a little bit more variety options. So I made it so that you could be a dwarf or an elf, but then you always pick a class as well. So you have both combining instead of the dwarf itself being a class.
So okay, so it's not really like OSR in that sense, more like second edition, first edition, where you know there was that extra level of complexity. So
yeah, that's
what makes Shadow Dark unique?
I would say a couple of things that really stand out about it that I had a lot of fun introducing is that time, actually real time, is an element in the game. And this was like one of those insights of epic proportions that I had while eating dinner once when I was working on this game. And I was like trying to solve this problem between like, how do we make light sources matter? How do we make the amount of equipment you carry matter? How do we actually make players feel pressure, like the time pressure of your fading torch? And I was like, oh, we just have to tie it to real time. So all light sources in the game last for an actual hour of real time. And the goal there is to put some outside pressure on the players not to constantly be in the book, constantly looking stuff up, taking too long on their turns, because they're seeing their torch fade as they're sitting there, you know, looking up a rule that they don't necessarily need to look up. So that was the big insight there is light lasts for real time duration. And also a lot of the character elements, like when you make a character, a lot of it is emergent and random. So when you gain a level, if you gain an ability at that level, you actually roll randomly for what it's going to be. And each class has its own themed roll table. So you're always going to get something that kind of fits your class. But this is a way to, I guess, prevent min-maxing or like investing in your build too much. And also it's just kind of fun, honestly. Like I love rolling for hit points when I gain a level. I don't know if you find it scary and fun. I love it. And so I wanted to extrapolate that into rolling for what your character is learning during their adventuring as well.
I'm a huge fan of the standard array because dice hate me.
Yes.
Although
your character, it's really fun.
One of the characters I did play more recently, out of peer pressure, I did roll the stats, and they were some of the best stats I ever rolled. So I think I have to retire from rolling stats at this point.
Oh no, but isn't it fun? Like it's so satisfying when you get the good rolls, and then nobody can be mad because you're like, hey, I rolled this. It was fair and square. I have a 17 dex. I have an 18 strength. You all saw it. So
they have to be rolling at the table though. Although I have one buddy we played with for years and years, and I was like, you cheat. I know you cheat. So I made him roll in front of me, and he still rolled like, you know, obscene stats.
He's like, I'm just blessed by the dice gods.
But, the dice gods love me. Yeah, for sure.
Good thing he's not. I hope he doesn't DM too much. Everyone's just going to die, you know?
So do you prefer DMing over playing, or do you prefer being a player?
I prefer DMing. I don't know. I've always I kind of like stumbled into DMing on accident, like I think a lot of us did, where like it was my group of friends in middle school. We were at the game store and our awesome dungeon master, um, like a snowstorm hit and he got stuck. And so all of us were there like, what are we gonna do? And I volunteered to run a game. Just
Yeah.
and so like I ran downstairs and I bought a module. Like they used to have these like long narrow modules by AEG, and I think they were called like pocket modules or something. And I like used my lunch money to buy one and read through it in like 15 minutes. No idea what I was doing, and then just like winged it and
Yeah.
ran a game for my friends. And I loved it. I had so much fun, like kind of improvising and trying to make up what was going to happen. And so I got super hooked on DMing from that point, and it's what I prefer to do. I don't know. Do you prefer DMing?
I feel like I prefer doing the thing I'm not doing at the time.
Yeah.
And when I'm playing, I want to DM, and when I DM, I want to play.
Yeah, I can see that. I like
It's
playing
kind of
too,
weird.
so.
I actually went through like a 2 year period where I really didn't DM at all, except for when we did D&D in the castle and like one shots and stuff like that. And like it wasn't a conscious decision, but it just occurred to me, like I had just been playing in a bunch of games, and it just occurred to me like I have not ran a campaign in a while. I was like, I
Wow.
think I'm overdue. So
But it can be good, right? I'm sure
uh,
like to take some time off from DMing so you can kind of like refresh your because it's a lot of work, right? Running games. So it can be nice to just relax and not have to be in charge of the game for once.
yeah, so like I mean I'm really lucky just because of doing this. I'm exposed to a lot of people, and I'm usually not. I'm never at a loss to find a game to join. You know, we get asked to join games pretty often, and we just, pretty much like our whole lives revolve around gaming anyway. So you're just immersed all the time. So when I did realize it, I was like, all right, well, let's go back to, because for a long time, what we did when 5e first came out was, and this is what we found that worked for us for consistently like finishing campaigns, was we would run every Saturday. We would have a game, and like that's always how we've done it. But the difference this time is like 3 Saturdays out of the month, we'd have a different GM, and it'd be a different game, and
Oh,
usually like two D&D games and a non D&D system, which
wow.
which had worked for us really good. And it was the first time we'd actually taken campaigns from level 1 to 20. Doing
Yeah.
that, it just takes a lot longer to do it when you're only playing once a month. And also like
Yeah, you're
just
like rotating
finding,
a lot.
yeah, but finding groups of adults that can commit to every Saturday is really hard. But it was a lot easier to find people that could commit to one Saturday out of the month. So there would be like some crossover in the group, but mostly it was just me and Ted in three different groups. And so we started that back up, and that's when I went back to kind of GMing on a regular basis. Um, and we actually just had we just finished up those arcs and swapped out like the GMs. So like the game that Ted was GMing, I'm going to now GM for those folks, and he's going to GM for the people that I was GMing for. Um, and then we're going to be starting. I think Saturday we have our session 0 for Shadow of the Demon Lord, which I've not played yet, so I'm curious to see how that plays.
Ooh. So
Uh,
you're just starting up. That's exciting.
yeah. So we've been through a couple cycles now, but we're starting up again. So
Mhm.
Ted had came up with like three or four really like intricate, cool, different ideas, and then like one of them was like, we live on a boat, and of course everyone's like, yeah, that one where you put the least amount of effort in, that's the one we want to do. So we did, so Saturday was the session 0 for that, and then the week before that, I had put together some pitches, and we're gonna do when that's kind of, it's a little bit inspired off of Descent into Avernus, in the sense that we just want to use the vehicles, and we're going to do like this post-apocalyptic magical apocalypse world, and they're basically going to be racers and a motorcycle gang.
Yes, that is so cool.
So
Is
well,
it gonna be like a deserty type environment?
yeah.
Like, yes.
So we've been playing in the same world since 5e kind of started, and like, but we played in
Mhm.
different versions of it. Um, so the underlying theme is like, for our world, is the gods are always mucking with stuff, and then when they have a mess up, they just come in and they sweep everything into an interdimensional space and put up some wards. Well, eventually, like, they've done that so much that it starts breaking down, and chaos magic just randomly gets unleashed into the world. So this is like, well, what has happened after like chaos magic has ravaged the world. So the campaign is called Under the Dome. So there's pockets of civilization that live under these erected magical domes that keep out the random chaos magic. But like, it's going to be kind of like, the technology level I'm going for is like Gaslight London, but
Ooh.
everything is run off of the chaos magic. So they go out and they scavenge um, uh, places that have been hit by chaos magic, and they bring it back and they produce something called grind. And the grind is this magic dust that they use to like power everything.
That is so cool.
And we're definitely going
I
to
love
have
that.
Warforged that have grind habits. So
That's genius. Oh, that is so cool. And it's going to make it like so fun to go out into the chaotic, like outer environment looking for those
yeah.
resources. That's such a great setup. I love that.
Well, and then because we're going to use the vehicles, then they're like, well, what about racing? And like, because they're like, we want to be like drag racers. So now there's like illegal street racing under the dome, but outside the dome they have like annual events that basically, like, the grind barons, which rule the cities, mainly participate in some of the other really wealthy people. And so there's a track that's set up around the city, but that one, more chaotic things can happen because it's not under the protection of the dome. So like, one of their
Awesome.
goals is to be able to get a racer into that race.
Yes. Oh, I want you to publish this so I can use it.
So
It's
we'll see.
super
We've only had
cool.
session 0. We'll see how it goes, but I've got a great group of players, so it should be a lot of fun.
Nice. Wow. So you're jumping back in full throttle here, dungeon mastering. That's exciting.
Yeah, well, I had
Oh
run
man.
another campaign before this one for the group that Ted's going to be now running for. Uh,
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
so that was our Court of Worms game, and that was like, um, that was a valley that kind of would have gotten everything inside of it would have gotten kind of swept away by the gods, but they figured out how to, avoid the gods.
Oh.
Um, and so like, the way everything evolved in there, it was all reptilian races and ruled by
Yeah.
these like dragon emperors that are almost like godlike beings in themselves. Uh, and so everyone played something that was, not a typical race. The main races are kobolds and dragonborn, and then like anything else scally as well. And also, like, the way we're doing like the dragonborn and the kobolds, there is like, the dragons that are there will have clutches of eggs, but they don't hatch dragons. They hatch kobolds and dragonborn out of the eggs.
Oh,
And occasionally one of the kobolds can ascend to become a dragon. So we're
that's
kind of
so
like
cool.
playing with some things and having some fun with that. Do you
I
play
love that. I love the idea of it.
do you play any non D&D games?
I do. I play, okay, so Index Card RPG, which is, I mean, it's like super D&D adjacent. It's a
Yeah.
like it could be its own edition of D&D practically, but I love that game. I honestly think it was like it's kind of what got me down the design road because I was so impressed by the concepts it put forth and then how that feels at the table when you're playing. So anyone like who wants, like, it's like kind of a lightweight, like really fast, really action heavy, um like D20 style game. So I think folks should absolutely check it out. The game mastering section in that book alone is like the best thing I've ever read. So I love that book. And I also have played Dungeon Crawl Classics is such a hoot. It's like super zany. It's like crazy, like wild magic, and like it's got like this like kind of like 70s vibe baked in, and like spell casting in DCC. Dungeon Crawl Classics is so hilarious and fun. It's like no wizard is the same. Like every wizard could perhaps learn similar spells, but they're all unique to that caster. So it's just really wild. I love it. Probably two of my favorites. Yeah.
So there's a question in the chat I want to grab from Brian. It's my birthday Friday. Happy birthday. And it looks like I'm going to be the only GM in our group available. Any suggestions for fun short games to run? Anybody in chat too?
Ooh, I mean, as far as adventures go, or like systems, I mean, if we're talking D&D, um, well, I think I'm trying to remember the name of it. There's this adventure that this writer named Merrick Blackman wrote, and it's called it's like something about a cornfield or something, and it's like a super short adventure, but the premise is the characters are like coming upon this scene. It's kind of horror-y, but they're coming upon this scene where there's like a like a teenager who is like confused about where he is and what just happened. And it's like, honestly, I ran that adventure and it's super short and like super impactful. And I have never seen my players argue more about what to do about a situation. It's like the kind of like arguing where you just sit back at the DM and you're like, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. I wish I could remember what it's called, but if you search DM's Guild for Merrick Blackman's work, it's like, and I think it's free, honestly. Or it's like super cheap. So like you'll find it, but it's like something about like death in the cornfield, or like if you, yeah, but it's horror. So if you don't want horror, maybe don't do that. But
yeah, my suggestion is along the same vein as well. Like I think Monster of the Week is such a great game for a one shot.
mm-hmm. Oh man, yeah, I've heard about Monster of the Week. I've never played it though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly new to it. I had ran a campaign in that as our non D&D game, and you know, it's a blast. I like the Powered by Apocalypse system. I like systems that aren't absolute, because like D&D is an absolute. Like you either do the thing or you don't do the thing. But you know, Powered by Apocalypse is like you fail, you can succeed with a consequence. You can succeed, and you have like a super success if you're higher into the game, higher level, I guess. Which is really cool. And also, I like the fact that you gain XP when you do things and fail.
That's cool. That's a really great idea.
And once you have 5 XP, you can upgrade your character. Like it's not like between adventures. It's just whenever it happens, you just do it, spend it.
That's awesome. I love that. I like the idea of like not only like simplified XP, but being able to kind of use it immediately. And it, like, I definitely did that in Shadow Dark. I made the XP systems like so much easier. It's like it's like single digit XP instead of hundreds or thousands or whatever. I don't know why that precedent ever got set. Like, this monster's worth 12,000 XP. Like, okay, it's a lot.
I don't know. Back in the day, they just loved the math so much.
Yes, they did. They did. I'm so glad. I would have been defeated immediately by the math if I was trying to play purely back then. Wrapping my head around THAC0 as a grade schooler was really difficult.
Cypher Systems is another one where it's like you get 4 XP, then you can spend it on, you know, whatever. To upgrade your character, and then like, but also like the GM does intrusions in that game, and you can bribe the GM to not intrude by spending XP if you want to. Ooh, but I find like the people that I play with, we always want the XP, so bring on the bad stuff.
That's awesome. That's really neat. Like, what are some of your favorites? So you like Monster of the Week. Do you have like other favorite like non D&D systems that you play a lot?
I wouldn't say we play a lot. We play more D&D than anything else. You know, like I said, I ran like, you know, I guess like 8-9 sessions of Monster a week. And then before that, we played The Expanse. That was a lot of fun, which is based off the age system.
Ooh.
Which actually for a while, Runehammer was actually in that game,
Oh,
which
nice.
he was a lot of fun to play with. And also, I was just amazed because he would like take notes, but like illustrate the notes while we were playing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that always like blew me away.
He's the
Cipher
best.
System is a lot of fun to play. I've had fun playing the Star Wars Fantasy Flight game system.
Mm.
Um, what else? We actually did 2 seasons on our channel of the Marvel Phase Rip game. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, I have not heard of that. Well, I mean, I've heard of it, but I've never, I don't actually think I know anyone who's played it.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it would have been out when you were talking about playing AD&D for sure.
Hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah.
like I remember as a kid, we got it and we played it, but like we didn't really play it right. We just fought each other. That's all we used it for.
Oh no. I mean, who hasn't done that with whatever system? Like we
Yeah,
used
I
to do
mean, like
that in
you got
D&D.
superheroes. Why not pit them against each other? And also, we would like the one GM just would run like wrestling matches in the Marvel. What I always forget the name of the wrestling federation there, but we would, we would do that. Um, but yeah, I don't know that I really have like favorites per se. Like, I just like playing other games. Like we had gone
Mhm.
out to Ohio to hang out with DM Scotty and Gareth from he has the 7D system and DMG info over on YouTube, and like they're like, so since he was going to be in from Australia, I'm like, all right, well, we can meet you in Ohio at the very least if you've jumped continents, so
It's a
uh,
good compromise.
yeah, and Ted's like, well, we could play D&D. I'm like, I don't want to play D&D. We play D&D all the time. Garrett made his own game. Let's play that. And then Scotty ran his simple D6 system, which I hope he someday actually publishes because it's really good.
I know. I keep hearing he's gonna publish it, and I'm like, I'm excited.
Ha-
I
Have you
people
ever
say
played
it's
it?
super fun. I haven't had the chance to because I don't really. I think part of the limitation is I don't know how to play it, and so I'd have
Yeah.
to learn and then teach other people because I don't know anyone else who
Yeah.
has played it that would pull me in. So
So like he hands you an index card. It gives you some information to write down on the index card, but literally you can just throw away the index card after that point because there's like so little. And I'm like, this
yes,
just works. This is amazing for how simple it is. Um,
yeah,
and then the 7D system is another system where you get XP for failing. And you also get like
nice.
bennies when you don't succeed at a test too, so that it gives you a better opportunity to do it next time. But successes in that game are always based off of ones, and the
Oh,
better you are at something, the smaller the die you use.
interesting.
So like
That's
if you
like a
have,
that's.
I think if you like no skill at all, use a D20. And so like
Mm.
and I think it's like a pool system. Like it was a couple years ago. It was in the before times. So you roll them, and all the ones that come up are successes. So, but like if you're rolling a d20, you're probably going to fail, and then you gain XP in the thing that you failed at doing. So you get better at that stuff much faster than the stuff you're already good at.
Interesting. I feel like it's always so like whenever I like play like a roll under system or like a
Yeah,
smaller is better system, I always feel like I do this like entire mental switch. Cause like,
yeah,
it's an interesting thing. I remember like the Runehammer, Hank Run from Runehammer talks about he like talks a lot about how like our limbic systems are really tied to like some of these things with role playing games that become automatic, like rolling a d20 and stuff, and like seeing a 20 come up on the die. And like
yeah,
it's interesting because he's talked a lot about how a lot of his design is built around trying not to like get in the way of the limbic system of like what we want, like what we get excited to see. But at the same time, like it's really cool to experiment with like I think like roll under is a really clean, like cool mechanic and like stuff like that. So it's just like I don't know, it's just playing lots of different ways and kind of like broadening what you automatically like reflexively respond to in the game, you know. But have you checked out Professor Dungeon Masters? He's making like a like kind of a light game called Deathbringer that's like sort of like old school D&D, but it's I he just posted a recent update about it, and I was like, oh, this looks really cool. Like it's like really clean and like fun and simple D&D, and it's like really deadly.
I have not yet. I think I vaguely remember one of his videos talking about it, but I've not looked at it yet.
I think he's just recently getting material out for it, so it's like in the last week. So
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us start moving in that direction, right? Eventually, like we want to do our own thing, like you yourself has said and are doing. It's like we started working on our own thing, put it on pause for the Kickstarter, and after the Kickstarter, we're probably going to start putting out some design diaries on the website and doing some videos. But we're actually going to we're just going to use an existing system and kind of hack that, because like
yeah,
we were in a Zoom call in a meeting, and someone said something, and someone else was like, I know you didn't say this, but I heard this, and they were just like, when they said the thing, I was like, oh, I would so play that. And because before I've never really been inspired to make our own game. Like we've been asked about that a lot, but like I'm like, there's so many good games out there. What am I going to do that's like going to compare it to that stuff? And then someone's like, well, you know, once we had an idea, then it's like, well, should we make our own system for that, or should we hack something? And we're like, we thought about it, and we're like, well, our idea didn't come from like, we hear some cool mechanics we want to introduce into a game, but from like a theme we wanted to experiment with. So so we're like, well, then let's just take one of these other games that we really like. We're looking at Power by Apocalypse, Morkborg, some other things, but we definitely want to do something like Rules Light. Because the older I get, the less I care about complexity and mechanics.
I know. I agree too. I think like I've moved away more like as time has gone on. I used to really enjoy like that super complexity, like that character like tweaking, and like especially like during third edition when things were like really like D. That was, I would say third edition was probably the most mechanically complex edition of D&D. And like I had so much fun back then, but now I look at it and I'm like, dude, oh my gosh, like synergy bonuses with skills, and like, no, keep it away from me. Like I can't, like, because I just don't have the brain space for it anymore. I'm just like, it's, I don't know. So like, I never really, I
don't think it's that. Like, I think you definitely have the brain space. It's like, but it's not like, I think a lot of us just don't enjoy that anymore. It's like, we don't care anymore. Yeah. Like, you're sitting on the floor and you've got like books surrounding you. You're like in a book fort. It's just like, why am I doing this?
It's maybe more like, like maybe not like the brain space, but more like, I don't want to invest the mental energy in that aspect of gaming. I want to invest it in other things. And so, it's interesting. Like I'm definitely leaning more towards like more lightweight systems for sure. And like as time goes on, I find myself leaning that way more and more. So who knows if that'll change? I know people develop over time. They go through all kinds of ups and downs and phases. But I wanted to ask you, because I was just thinking about this. What do you think is like the most obscure RPG you've ever played? Because I was trying to think back, like what's the most like most fun, but most like off the beaten path RPG I've ever played. And I think for me, there's one called like The Skeletons that my friend Ken, who's this awesome dungeon master in the New York City area, he introduced me to this game where you like play the role of a skeleton locked in a tomb, and like you're like rolling to see like how many eons go by between like adventurers coming in, and your goal is to like get the adventurers out of your tomb. Like you're the skeleton defending the tomb. And like it's fun.
Well, that's a newer game, and that's put out by, oh my god, I hate myself so much I can't think of the name of the person.
I know, and it's like not It's not
Marquise.
obscure at all either. Yeah, it's like a big name in indie RPGs, but I remember thinking like this game is probably the most off the beaten path RPG I've played in a long time.
I think Marquise. Am I saying his right? Probably butchering
I
his
have to
name.
look it up. Oh, my internet's all closed up. I got to try to find it too.
Andrew Marquise, I think, is the one that puts that out.
It was super fun. Honestly, I was like super surprised going into it. I wasn't sure what to expect. And honestly, I still think about the game. Like we played it years ago.
Yeah.
Everyone should try it.
I don't know that I've really played that many like I think like probably 7D Systems is the most obscure, but only because it's not really newer now, but it's definitely like more indie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely in the like indie sphere and it's very lightweight. I remember we rolled something like an entire like epic went by, like literally like it went from like the Pleistocene to the Holocene, but
Uh,
between the next incursion of creatures into our
oh, you
tomb,
know
it was
what?
so
He doesn't
funny.
put out skeletons. He puts out skull box.
Oh, I don't know that one. I should know that one.
Um,
Skullbox.
yeah, that's all. If you go to Shardstone is the website. But it
Stone.
sounds very similar.
I'm
Take on
seeing,
the
oh,
role
I'm
of
seeing the
sentient punk skulls who need to use psychotic traps and weird contraband to keep wannabe heroes from taking their stuff.
I love it.
Is the first line. Yeah, I mean, it's always like there's always like way too many RPGs and just not enough time.
I know. There's so many out there. Like, I don't know, asking like the most obscure one too is like obscure is almost an insult. I mean, I should have said what's the most off the beaten path one.
Okay,
I
so
also did play
Jason
the
Morningstar did the skeletons. Thanks, Shalador.
Oh, thank you. Oh yeah, see, I've been so bad. I just logged into the chat just now. I forgot there was a
Yeah.
there was a chat.
Well, when they drop
Oh,
questions in there, we try and grab them and pull them out to ask. As long as they put question or question marks in front of it, because it makes it so much easier to find.
oh, there's so many nice people in the chat. Hi everyone. I recognize some faces for sure.
Yeah.
Hi everybody.
So what are you working on right now?
So right now, what I'm working on, I'm still working on Shadow Dark, but that's more in the art phase. It's the writing is like 99% set in stone. So now I'm herding like giant cat like groups of artists in one direction. But every artist I've worked with has been so lovely for this. So I'm so lucky. We got some like really impressive, like people who I never thought would be willing to do art for this project decided to sign on to it. So, and I'm also I just put out a zine and I'm already thinking of ideas for the next one, which is a good sign. I might actually start working on it in the near future. And I want to get some that's a zine for Shadow Dark. So I'm actually like releasing content for the game that's not technically published yet, but the entire beta is online. It's like 170 pages of playable material online for free. So you can use all
Kickstarter
of
does
that
a
with
whole
it.
zine
And
thing. When did they do their zine thing? You should get in on that.
I know Zine Quest, I like found out, I think it just happened. So I think I missed it. I know, isn't that a bummer? But it's okay because I could do it next time around instead. But
Yeah.
that's going on. That's been really fun. That was a really satisfying project to work on, and I'm really happy with how it came out. And then I'm probably going to do some 5th edition writing because I haven't published anything 5th edition in a little bit, not since October. So it's time. It's time to maybe put some 5e out. And I had some ideas for that one of some like kind of fun low level stuff relating to spiders. That's all I can be certain of for now, but something I've been meaning to write for a little while.
Spiders, huh?
Yeah, something about spiders. Let's, no Lolth though. She's not in this one. She's trademarked, so she can't be.
She is trademarked. Have you interacted with Tony Vesanda at all? I'm probably butchering his last name. From 1XP?
Oh, I would feel bad. Okay, so I've definitely interacted with Tony's, and perhaps one of them was him, but the last
He
name is
also
not.
creates beard products that are RPG themed.
Oh, I really need to
Yeah, yeah.
need some help with that. So maybe you can help me get working on that. Yeah, no, you know what, Tony, if we've interacted and I'm failing to remember, that's on me, but I don't specifically recall
Well, so
right now.
the reason why I bring it up is because his channel does a lot more like OSR type stuff on his
Oh,
YouTube channel, and like they do gameplays and playthroughs and stuff like that, and check out new things. So for your Shadow Dark, he'd probably be a good person to connect with.
Tony, let me give you Shadow Dark stuff to try.
So I have to remember what his YouTube channel is, but I think it's like XP1 or 1XP.
Oh yeah. And then who
And
knows? Like I know there's
Yeah.
there's this whole thriving OSR
yeah.
like segment of YouTube. So
And I just got done playing Vastgrim Vastgrim stream game with him, and he was a fantastic role player. Vastgrim is it's a newer game. It's a sci-fi horror game.
ooh.
And it's a Morkborg hack. And have you seen Morkborg? Have you checked that out at all?
Morkborg, yeah. It's wild.
Yeah,
It's so cool.
I own it, but I have not played it. And like, so I guess like Morkborg is like heavy metal meets fantasy. Well, Vastgrim is more like punk meets sci-fi horror, and and uses a lot of the rules from that. So we played that. So Tony was playing an emo bot that was like the butler to the ship, except for everywhere he went, he would like just leave glitter. So nothing was ever actually cleaned.
Oh my gosh, glitter, the poison of decor. Like it's
Yeah. And like the very first episode, my character was the pilot and may or may not have had something to do with destroying our ship by crashing it. And ever since then, like anytime that was referenced, he's like, my forever home that was destroyed.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But yet
I
the
was
glitter
pretty
is
sure
how
that
we
the
still
campaign was going to end with him murdering us all.
Oh no. Well, someone's got to die at the end of a campaign, either the players or the bad guy. But no, that's so funny. That's
Yeah.
oh my, I can't even imagine like trailing glitter. I'm still stuck on that. Like everywhere you go, it's like in 1,000 years, they'll still be able to see exactly where you walked. Like that glitter's not going anywhere. Oh man.
It is modern day pixie dust.
It surely is. You get one on your eyelid and it'll be there for like the next like 3 to 6 months. And you'll never see it because you have to blink to see it. So you'll never see it. Someone has to be kind enough to tell you.
If you're lucky.
True friend.
So do you have a home game that you're playing in?
I do. I've been running a campaign for some friends of mine like since before I even started publishing. It's a mix of people from that era. I'm about to run some games for my original dungeon master, who's a hero of mine, James Mishler. He's a fantastic writer. He's like the world's living authority on the city state of the invincible overlord. I would not be even publishing D&D, or maybe not. I may never even become a writer if not for his influence on me as an early gamer. So he's a fantastic writer, and he publishes D&D material too. Absolutely worth scoping out. James Mishler. And so I'm going to run a game for him and some friends. And I play in a weekly game with Hankerin from Runehammer and a group of players of his. And it is like absolutely magical. Like they're just some of the most spectacular and creative gamers ever, and like so insightful. And they help me with design considerations for Shadow Dark. So like that crew is just absolutely the best. So 3 games I'm in.
Nice.
I wished more, but time makes it difficult.
Three's a decent amount.
Yeah, I play and run kind of even amounts. So, um, yeah, the game with the Runehammer folks are really fun because we're playing a group of dwarves who are all related to each other. And it's been just wild. It's been super fun. The DM is Alex from the Runehammer crew. He's a spectacular game master. So we're so lucky to have him.
Are you playing a lady dwarf?
Yes, her name is Styx. She's a thief style dwarf, and she's super fun. I love
Beard
her.
or no beard?
You know what? She doesn't. She does in my mind. She doesn't have a beard, but like, could she have one? I think that's like an option. Like, she could decide to be like, I want a beard, you know.
Yeah.
And then she would need some beard oil.
I always have to ask. I always prefer my dwarf women with beards. I don't know why. Also, I just like the fact that it just like breaks gender norms.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, look at that. It's like, you know, it's
Yeah.
it's. I mean, didn't Gary Gygax himself insist that they had beards? Like,
Maybe. I don't know. So
I don't know. Yeah, yep. You know what's so crazy? I got to meet him when I was a kid. And he was super nice to me and he told me I should become a dungeon master. He was like, you should become a dungeon master. And he said, literally, quote, and slap your players around like redheaded dwarves. And I was like, all right, coming from the voice of the
you should
master.
print that quote in everything you do.
I know. I mean, I've told the story before, but like I was like 12 years old because my birthday falls over Gen Con. So James Mishler pulled some strings and got Gary like snatched like 5 minutes of his time so he would like say hi to me and to my friends, and like he signed my DM's guide and he gave me some dice, and he was so nice to me, and he was like super encouraging because he knew I wanted to be a dungeon master, and he was like, you have to. And so now I'm like, Gary told me I had to. So like it was a really cool experience.
It's always weird to see him referenced from different places, from people that probably never met him, right? Because because you get a very mixed views.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's a very complex human being, but I can say from personal experience that he was very kind and encouraging to a 12-year-old girl who loved Dungeons and Dragons. So I have my DM's guide with his signature in it still.
My birthday also generally falls during Gen Con.
What?
It
We
does.
need to celebrate our birthday together. I didn't know this.
I didn't know it either. So my birthday is August 1st.
Mine's the 4th. So look at that.
We will have to get together at Gen Con one day to celebrate our birthdays.
We absolutely need to. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting.
It's Origins and Gen Con is a point of contention in my family because one falls on Father's Day and one falls on my birthday. So
you're like, I have to be gone for both. I know.
Yeah.
I know.
With so the family has a minor uprising during those times. So, but I'm like, it's Father's Day. I'm supposed to do what I want, right? Like,
exactly. That's
what I want is to not be around kids.
There you go. Yeah. I get to like, that's all I ask for now for my birthday or like Christmas. Like my wife's like, what do you want for Christmas? And I'm like, a D&D pizza party. Like I'm back to being a kid again. I'm like, I want 4 hours to play D&D with people. Like, yeah. So it's,
you do that fairly regularly anyway.
I do. But I have this dream, and it has yet to come to fruition, but I have this dream of like, because of the COVID era making things more difficult, of like somehow bringing like friend groups together in person, like near where I live, to be able to play D&D in person for a weekend or something. But it's harder than it sounds. So we haven't pulled it off, but someday.
That is how True Dungeon started, as the legend goes.
Really?
So
wow.
I had the creator and owner of True Dungeon on, and what he told me is they lived like in a college town. So like they started having like this mini event where they would just invite people back for like a weekend or whatever and do it. And like, but he would always like build elaborate props, and like which each year they got more elaborate and more elaborate. And then he did it. And someone's like, "You should actually do this," and that's how they started True Dungeon, which is like they don't get any credit for it, but I think True Dungeon is like the predecessor to the modern day escape room. Like they invented escape rooms, and like they get no credit for it, and I don't even think they're aware. So.
Oh no, that's so funny because I remember trying to get into True Dungeon like every year at Gen Con, and it was sold out. I couldn't get in. I never got to do it once. But I remember trying so hard because it was the coolest.
Yeah, I've done it twice. So being moderately successful on YouTube definitely opened some doors. So we did it one time. I did it at Origins. It was me, my wife, and we had an extra ticket, so we invited Dan Dillon, and who was super smart and solved most of the puzzles on his own. Although that day I was feeling so sick, and it was not as much fun as it could have been.
Oh no! Oh no!
And then the other time I did it when we used to have a live stream called Savor Dice. And we just did the run as Savor Dice, and we died at the end. So.
Oh no! I mean, glory. That's you get to be like, I got killed in the True Dungeon. It should be like an award you can win.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. It's definitely cool. I like the way they do the combat is shuffleboard essentially.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Like if you're the ranger, you get to attack with 2 weapons, but you have to do them at the same time. So you have to use your offhand and shuffleboard with both simultaneously. And then at the monk, there's like a special rule where you get a bunch of attacks, but you have to do them real fast. But it was fun.
That's really smart. I love that because it like brings in the classic element of the class.
Yeah.
Like, of course you would have to do the 2-handed fighting at the same time when you're the ranger. It makes so much sense.
It is much harder than D&D because there's definitely puzzles and stuff that you have to do. So it's like, I think for a lot of like spellcasters, they're like memory games essentially. So like if you don't have a good memory, you're probably not going to do great at those.
Don't be the spellcaster.
Yeah, don't be the spellcaster. So we are just past the hour mark. Final thoughts before we head on out?
Oh, well, I'm just so glad that we got to talk finally. I've always admired your channel like from afar because I'm the worst lurker ever, but I am so grateful that we get to finally do this. And thank you to everybody who's listening in.
Well, thank you for coming on. It's been great chatting with you. It's been a blast. As always, folks, there are links down in the description to follow Kelsey around the interwebs, and we still have that Kickstarter going on that is funded. And until next time, stay nerdy.